Hello, this is Fear Dragon, and welcome to Breaking Out, the show about North American StarCraft 2 players. Here on this show, we spend 1 week highlighting an up-and-coming North American player. Throughout the week, we find out more about the player's history, their personality, and their playstyle over the course of 6 short episodes. On Monday, we'll interview the player and find out more about them. Tuesday through Thursday, we'll watch a game from each of the various matchups casted by your very own Fear Dragon. On Friday, we'll check out a generally awesome game with some sick play, and on Saturday, we'll kick it back with the player and have some wacky fun with some randomly selected events like handicap ladder matches, karaoke, and dance contests. Each episode aims to be about 20 to 30 minutes long, so you can learn more about the North American StarCraft 2 scene without interrupting your busy WCS schedule. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, this is Fear Dragon, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Out. Today we have an awesome PvP on our hands for the awesome game of the week. It has finally arrived. It is Friday, and I hope you guys are as excited as I am. It is again going to be a Protoss versus Protoss featuring Root Seeds' Arium, so let's go ahead and jump in and introduce the players officially. As we spawn down here in the bottom right hand corner of Frost, the ladder edition, it is going to be representing Team Root Seed. It is the 14-year-old Grandmaster Protoss player, Arium. And this is, of course, his favorite matchup. So I'm excited to see how this will end up shaping out against his opponent. Spawning up here in the top left-hand corner as the blue Protoss player, a former member of Root Gaming, actually leaving right around the same time as Arium actually ended up joining Root Gaming. It is going to be ex-Root Gaming player, TT1. TT1, an absolutely fantastic Protoss player, has been around since actually somewhere around the early beta days, I believe, of StarCraft 2, and has been a consistent performer ever since then. Has some really fun builds to watch as well, but he's going to be facing off against his almost teammate. I can't even say that they're ex-teammates because Arium literally joined on the same announcement as TT1 leaving, so they were never technically teammates. But still, I'm sure that they are doing some nice little friendly matches together. And what is this? Arium gonna go ahead and send out that early gateway probe scout, whereas it looks like TT1 just opting to wait around a little bit. Not going to be scouting too early on, but actually just sticking around on one gas geyser for a little bit longer. You know, it's kind of funny. We were watching the PvP over on Thursday. That was yesterday if you're watching this live. And we ended up seeing that the game Arium submitted was also a Protoss versus Protoss, of course, but it was against one of his other teammates, Root Minigun, and Root Minigun also going for a very similar style that TT1 is going for. He goes and sticks around this one gas geyser for a little bit longer and then grabs the second gas geyser and eventually transitions into a little bit of robotics facility tech. Whereas Arium is sticking with his tried and true, going for that double gas geyser, going to get up that very quick mothership core, I imagine, as soon as that cybernetics core finishes up, and go for that 3 stalker rush. As you can see, the double gateway has been thrown down. He's going to be able to get up a stalker as soon as the cybernetics core finishes up, and also get out the mothership core and the additional 2 stalkers immediately afterwards. Sees a little bit of map control, put on a little bit of pressure. But at the same time, TT1 just going to be going for a sentry early on. Now, this is very interesting and not something that you see every day. We have 3 guys in each one of these gas geysers. That's pretty normal, and he's definitely going to need that considering he grabs the second gas geyser a little bit later than normal. And of course the sentry should be able to chase out the probe, but shouldn't be able to kill it off. So TT1 just going to use this to play a little bit more defensively. And honestly, this is looking to me a lot like TT1 wants to take a fast expansion. Yeah, this probe even kind of indicating the same thing. Now you have to remember, he does not have a mothership core on the way, so he's going to need to get it out soon. There we end up seeing it's finally started. He needs to get that up to get a photon overcharge, because a photon overcharge is going to be so critical to actually defending against any kind of aggression that Arium could end up doing. And we saw it in the last game with Root Gaming's Arium versus Root Gaming's Minigun. And what ended up happening was Minigun had to defend with the photon overcharge against Arium's 3 stalker pressure with the mothership core. And Arium going to be going for that same thing. He's checking around with this probe, going to be moving out across the map. Actually, a little bit surprised he didn't even bother to target the Zelnong Watchtower, but I guess he has this one over here, so he feels okay. He's going to actually miss this probe, though. This probe sneaking around And honestly, it's sneaking around because he doesn't actually know where Arium actually is right now. So he might actually just be able to use that as a little bit of an advantage just by the fact that he hasn't scouted out. So he's going to take a very odd path with this probe. It's going to be able to get around and establish up a proxy pylon a little bit later. But Arium is setting up a proxy pylon of his own. He's going for that Stargate. Once again, this is looking very, very similar to the last game, but he's added on a third gateway. Let's see how much damage can he do. There's a lot of sentries available for TT1, but we saw Arium with some great control of that last game was able to snipe off some of those sentries, and especially with that high ground vision from the mothership core, he could plant down a time warp and actually be super duper aggressive. But in the meanwhile, he's going to try and damage a little bit on this Nexus. Right now, the mothership core is going to be just a little bit away from that photon overcharge and finally has enough energy. Is likely going to be throwing that down sometime soon. Might even just kind of wait until the Nexus shields actually lower itself a little bit so that maybe he can get up an Immortal or something, or maybe a Stalker before he actually goes in. And it looks like he's going to plant down some force fields and manage to snag a Stalker. That's definitely worth it. A really great play from TT1, and Arium ends up losing one of his very, very valuable early game Stalkers, but he's going to be coming in with that Oracle, and this is going to be a big difference from that other PvP that we saw. In that last PvP, we saw that Minigun went for a much more Stalker-heavy force, whereas it looks like TT1 has opened up much more Sentry-heavy, so the Sentry is not going to be quite as effective against this Oracle, but we'll have to see. These three Stalkers are still going to be able to do a pretty good job at defending against this Oracle harassment. We'll have to see whether or not Arium also decides to commit to the front, but he's going to be facing up against an Immortal, and that's going to be a bit difficult. The Oracle over here does get chased away by these three Stalkers. Really good positioning by TT1, and of course, behind this Arium is just taking that expansion. Now, here is another big difference, is the fact that TT1 is still producing probes, whereas I think in that last game, we didn't end up seeing the probes being produced. So hold that thought, a nice set of force fields actually going down for TT1, but hold that thought, actually maybe take it back right now, because it looks like even though the Stalkers are kind of trapped in over here with the photon overcharge and everything and the Immortal going up, it looks like Arium able to take the better end of the engagement. He managed to snag off one of those Immortals, and actually with the Sentry warped in, he was able to force field that ramp, keep all Dia's units completely out of the fight, and even comes in and snags off another 9 kills with that Oracle. You can see over here, folks, and he has killed off 11 workers right now. Arium taking a really, really good position in this game, and I have to say he had to do damage because TT1 took so much earlier of an expansion, but at the same time, you have to, oh god, even more probes going to be going down, and this Oracle is, of course, going to be able to get out before really even sustaining any health point, hull damage at all. But Arium, of course, did get up this expansion a little bit later, which meant he had to do damage, but I think that he did more damage than maybe he was even expecting to doing. The one big advantage that TT1 still has is that he has this Immortal out, and he also has a robotics facility tech up. If you can actually maybe transition out into Colossus or something, he could be still in a pretty decent position. He's not exactly down and out of this game just yet, but hold out that Arium coming in, focus firing down with some more probes. Looks like he's going to be sacrificing this Oracle to do whatever extra damage that he can. He's realized that his advantage lies in that worker count now, so he's going to go ahead and try and push that advantage as far as humanly possible. I should say Protosly possible, because I guess he's not playing Terran, so that would make a little bit more sense. But now we end up seeing, once again, Arium starting a little bit of that Voider production. Going to be producing multiple Void Rays in this game, as opposed to that game against Minigun again, so a slight little variation. But now we're going to end up seeing another Oracle coming in over here, managing to snag off another 4 probes, throwing down the Revelation on these probes as well. So he's going to have a little bit of vision, I suppose, on those probes. Maybe you'll see if they decide to go out and try and do a little bit of probe transfer-esque mechanisms. Or actually, you'll probably actually just doing that so they can get vision on where these Stalkers are, which I really, really like. If those Stalkers ever decide to uncommit themselves to the defense, Arium can swing in again with that Oracle. But now we end up seeing the Immortal over here being as annoying as possible, picking off this pylon. Has to be a little bit careful though, because he has a Revelation on it, so he is being revealed to Arium. Arium could be very, very sneaky and try and snap off that Immortal, but not going to be happening for right now. Instead, Arium just going for a little bit of that pressure play. We'll have to see how much damage he can do right now. He's getting out another Immortal. He's getting up some of those weapon upgrades, pretty much evenly timed with his opponent TT1, who is actually getting up additional gateways and getting up a Twilight Council, so might be looking to try and transition out into Blink, whereas Arium getting up the Robotics Bay and just going to be putting up some pressure behind this little teching play that he's doing right now. He's going to be scouting around with that hallucinating thing. So what is he going to see? Is he going to go ahead and commit to this aggression? Honestly, I feel like he could do a lot of damage right now if he actually commits in over here. There's not that many gateways actually up and ready to start warping in right now, and there's really not that many gateway units. There's a handful of stalkers over in the main base. I think there's 3, and there's another 3 stalkers, 3 sentries, 2 zealots, and an immortal. And in comparison, he has to deal with quite a few units from Arium. Arium's starting to push in over here. Some force fields going down and actually manages to trap in one of those stalkers. It's going to be a nice little win. This immortal not going to be able to get involved in this fight over here, but the photon overcharge is doing a lot of damage. He's actually managed to start sniping off the shields on the muster core from Arium. Arium has to be careful. He's going to actually just go ahead and recall. Doesn't want to take any chances right now. He has a big lead. Why try and squander it? But I have to say that TT1, being a fantastic player as he is, has managed to actually come back quite a bit economically right now. He's only down about 6 workers by this point in time, and he's actually getting up photon cannons over in the main base, and actually it looks like not getting one at the natural expansion, but the one in the main base is going to be a great play to especially deal with this Oracle. This Oracle going to be able to snag off a couple more kills before any of that before it actually ends up getting sniped off by that photon cannon. It actually looks like it does manage to get away with just some hull damage, but still getting up to 12 kills. That is the second Oracle that Arium produced, and he is already up to 29 workers killed so far. And with that being said, he is now up from only 6 workers. Now he's up to about 12 or 14 workers. I think it's around 14 workers. Never do math on stream, folks. 62 minus 48. He's up that many workers. And with that being said, Arium can kind of just sit and chill for a little bit, honestly, and just kind of macro up a little bit more of an army. Get up some of these zealots, maybe even start researching charges. It looks like charge is actually going to be finishing very soon. And at the same time, he's adding on additional gateways and getting out that key and critical Colossus tech that it looks like TT1 has kind of been skimping out on a little bit, because TT1 has been going for that Templar Archives instead, getting up those Archons, and we'll have to see how well it ends up working out. I'd actually love to see him maybe have one of those High Templar warped in as soon as he gets that up, and you know, maybe just feed back the Oracle. The Oracle can't really do anything if it's fed back, and we end up seeing that this Oracle is doing a lot of damage over here, but it looks like the Photon Overcharge finally going to be cleaning up that Oracle. And of course, that's going to allow TT1 to safely grab this expansion without really a fear of, you know, taking too much damage from the backside over in the main base or even at the natural expansion. Now he can position his units a little bit more aggressively over at the front and just defend over there. But I really like that Arium has all of these proxy pylons set up right now. It's going to be a great position for him. At the same time, TT1 has a really great scat off on exactly what his opponent is up to. He's seen the robotics facilities. He's seen the Colossus. He's seen the third expansion, and the question is going to be, what does TT1 do about it? Again, he is down almost 20 workers right now, or I should say 12 workers, because again, never do math on stream, folks. But he's down about 12 workers, and he has to make something happen, because if he allows Arium to just sit back on an economic lead, as well as the fact that he has Colossus in production over his opponent, if those Colossus get into too big of numbers, then TT1 is going to be in a really difficult position. But right now, he has to take out these proxy pylons. Doesn't want to deal with any kind of zealot warpings that it looks like Arium is going to be going for right now, as he sees the army is over here on the right-hand side. Why not warp in some zealots on the left-hand side? Stop your opponent from moving out. Arium is trying to buy time, and it's working out fantastically right now. He's going to be getting up the +3 weapons upgrade in comparison to his opponent TT1, who's only just going to be finishing up that +2 right now. So it looks like TT1 kind of opting to get a little bit more of the armor, but look at that, a free Immortal actually coming out of the mix from the Zealot harassment. A really great win for Arium right now. He's going to force this entire army back right now as well, and even though this pylon was scattered out, it's going to be able to survive for a little bit longer. Now, of course, Arium's Zealots are going to get cleaned up by TT1s, since TT1s do have a little bit of extra armor, but still, I have to say that Arium swan within a little bit of Immortal, and again, he's buying time, so it's totally worth it to do any of that kind of stuff, and I like this move from TT1. He needs to come back. He needs to make something happen. Why not do it with a pylon over here, over on the high ground? This is a little bit unexpected. You can actually walk your probe in over here, and now you're suddenly on the high ground of your opponent's 4th expansion. A little bit unexpected, but he could actually start to warp in some zealots over here when he goes for some of that harassment over at the front. And by harassment, I mean moving in with his entire freaking ball of Archons, Immortals, and charged zealots. So TT1 going to have a very strong and scary army. The question is going to be, when does he hit, though? Again, Arium has so many of these Colossus, and I actually don't like this move that much from TT1. He actually revealed the fact that he had that Pollen over there, but at the same time, I mean, yeah, I suppose he has this one over here, so we can always walk them down straight over to this 4th expansion once again, but still. It's a little bit interesting decision. They decided to play his cards without actually having the main army also there to kind of do a little bit of extra damage. But I have to say that one thing that we have to note is that Arium is getting up that, what, 4th expansion now, and right now, TT1 has no 4th expansion inside. Okay, as I say that, of course, he goes ahead and takes the 4th expansion. But still, I really, really am worried that if TT1 does not move out and do some pressure, he's going to be a little bit too far behind to actually deal with Arium's unit composition. As we saw in that last PvP of Arium versus Minigun, he won just by getting a very smart composition. He got up exactly the number of Colossus he needed and went into the Tempest production immediately as soon as he needed to. So he has a really good feel and read on the matchup. But in the meanwhile, it looks like TT1 is finally looking to be a little bit aggressive. Arium does not have that many Archons, up to about 4 right now. And he also has a handful of these Charged Zealots, but he is going to be a little bit behind in the armor upgrades, I believe, as we're sitting. No, actually, it looks like TT1 behind, the one behind on the weapons upgrades. They're actually tied on armor upgrades, and oh, whoever gets the better concave in this engagement could end up being the victor over here. But at the same time, we see a War Prism coming in from TT1, dropping a ton of Zealots over here in the main base. He's going to be able to start to take out some of these vital tech structures over here. Going to be able to take out one of the Stalkers. Might even be able to get a Colossus, but no, the Colossus, in addition to the Void Ray and the Mothership Core with the Photon Overcharge, is going to be able to take that out. But we'll have to see, does TT1 force back a lot of this army? No, Arium is on to TT1 shenanigans. He realizes that he's trying to pull him out of position, is not going to be pulling back his entire army to try and deal with that. That's a sign of a really smart player knowing exactly how to split up your army. But the longer that TT1 waits, the more difficult it's going to be, unless TT1 gets some giant concave where he engages with a huge number of Archons and Charged Zealots from the top side and a huge number of Archons and Charged Zealots from the bottom side. He is going to be in too difficult of position in terms of being out unit composition right now. Both of these armies are pretty much maxed out, but Arium is the one with a ton of splash damage. He has all these Colossus in the mix. He even has a couple of Void Rays in the mix. That means that, you know, these Archons are going to have to survive, but they're going to be the ones in the front. So he needs to make sure that he gets a great engagement over here and maybe even land some really key and critical storms. But no Psionic Storm actually research right now. We're going to see the big engagement going down. The Colossus really doing a good job doing some kiting damage or doing some splash damage over here. But the Archons are actually taking a lot of damage for TT1. TT1 getting kited a little bit though, and Arium doing a great job with this engagement right now. The Blink Stalkers blinking up, seeing what damage they can do. They managed to pick off that Void Ray, so no more anti-air or actually air units left over for Arium, but Arium is actually going to be moving up this choke point, and it's going to be too difficult for TT1 to actually move up and try to engage in that army. But at the same time, TT1 has taken a little bit of an advantage. Yeah, he's lost a lot of these Archons over here, but he actually managed to trap Arium for a little bit. I'm actually a little bit surprised that he let Arium get away over there. He backed up to that Proxy Pollen, or to the War Prism, I should say, to try and regroup, but that allowed Arium to sneak back out. But Arium is actually caught in a little bit of an awkward position right over here. He has to be a little bit careful right now. He cannot afford to lose any of these Colossus. He gets Blunk on top of right now, losing one Colossus, losing another Archon as well, and with a great time warp going down from TT1, he's going to be able to snag even more of these units. Now it looks like Arium is trying to warp in some Archons, try and get some tanking damage in front of those Colossus, so the Colossus can do what they do best and tank, or sorry, fire from behind or behind their tanky units like Archons, like Charged Zealots. But look at this, these Immortals are going to be able to rip apart the entire Colossus army as soon as those Archons are dissipated. More Charged Zealots being warped in. Are they going to be enough? There are no more Charged Zealots left in for TT1. It looks like TT1 overcommitting just a little bit. He needs to warp in some more of his own Charged Zealots, but these Colossus still remaining alive from the backside are able to rip apart all the warped in units of TT1. And now, with that being said, we only have Immortals left over, but no shields left over on these Immortals. That means that they're going to be taking supreme splash damage from these Colossus. They're going to have to back up. TT1 losing a huge investment over there, and again, these Colossus just paying for themselves, and Arium really winning that unit composition war. But here we go. TT1 is not out of this yet. He is not giving up. He's moving in with a Charged Zealot warping, but Arium responding in turn with DTs, and DTs do a massive amount of splash, or not splash damage, but they do a massive amount of straight up damage. 60 damage per shot with +3 weapons. They're going to be able to eat alive those Zealots from TT1. So TT1 unable to snipe down that third, or that 6th expansion, 5th expansion. I believe it's the 5th expansion, yes. So at the end of all of that, we end up seeing that Arium comes out a bit ahead. He's actually quite a bit ahead. 50 supply ahead, has a lot of those high-tech units still left over, has a 5th expansion pretty much going up and running. In the meanwhile, TT1 falling a little bit behind. Yeah, he has the +2 shield upgrades in comparison to Arium's +1 shield upgrade, but that is pretty much the only advantage that TT1 has right now. And he's behind in the unit composition right now. He's behind in army supply. He's even behind a little bit in workers, although honestly not too far behind, but mainly he's behind in the expansions where those workers can actually mine and be productive. So we'll have to wait and see what can TT1 do. He has to maybe move in with some War Prisms, move in with some DTs again, try and send them to start harassing these expansions while he tries to go for some kind of big surrounding engagement on this army. But the question is it going to be enough, as now we end up seeing Tempest being mixed in over here for Arium. He stops at 4 Tempest though, partially because he's actually completely supplied, capped out. He can't really produce anything else, as we end up seeing a poor Archon trapped over here behind these 2 robotics facilities. But at the same time, I just don't know if TT1 can even start Colossus production or anything. I think that he just has to go for a super mobile force like these Charged Elves, get up this huge bank, and maybe try and go for a huge round, not engage on one of these chokes like he might actually end up engaging over here. I'm not sure if he has a choice right now. He's trying to find a good engagement, but a nice time warp goes down, and the Colossus are going to start to rip apart these Charged Elves with massive amounts of splash damage. The Immortals getting into a pretty good position though. They're managing to snipe off 1 Colossus, a 2nd Colossus goes down as well, and it looks like these Archons from Arium be able to take the Zealot engagement, and GG gets called. TT1, the ex-player from Root Gaming, falls to his almost teammate from Root Seeds Academy, Arium. And Arium, the 14-year-old Grandmaster level player, taking out a huge name such as TT1. Going to be a great name, or great game actually, for everyone to witness, as Arium really just showing that he can play out that big macro game, especially in PvP, man. Do not mess with this kid, because he knows his PvP, he can nail it, and he knows exactly what unit composition to get and when exactly to be aggressive. When is the right time to start, pushing out, of course. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in for this episode of Breaking Out. It's been the awesome game, and it was a pretty awesome game indeed. We saw a super heavy macro game of PvP with Tempest mixed in. We saw Charged Zealot Archon from TT1. Didn't end up quite working out, as I feel like TT1 kind of missed his timing a little bit. I'm really curious actually what TT1's thought process was on holding off on those attacks for such a long period of time. But with that being said, Arium played this out fantastically as well, so I cannot take it away from him. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please be sure to follow me over on twitch.tv/FearDragon64 to get notifications about the future episodes of Breaking Out. We're going to have another episode tomorrow. That's going to be the fun day episode where we're going to sit back, relax with a Root Gaming Seeds Arium, and, have a little bit of fun. And then we're going to go over the games and talk a little bit about them, the games that were submitted throughout the week that we've been taking a look at, and get, Arium's perspective on these games and why he chose them. If we missed any vital key details about his builds that were super duper cool details. And of course, you can check out the VODs over on youtube.com/FearDragon64 if you cannot catch these videos live. So please go ahead and subscribe over there, and be sure to check out Root Gaming's Arium, and of course Root Gaming over in the Twitch comments. The chat comments, I should say. I'm probably posting that over there right now, or maybe even a minute or two ago. And of course, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can find it just below the video, and just go ahead and click out all those links, and follow him on Twitter, etc. And you can also follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, at FearDragon64. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you tomorrow at the fun day episode of Root Arium's week on Breaking Out. So it's going to be super awesome. We're going to have some fun. We're going to get some information from Arium, and we're going to close up the week. So guys, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful night, and have a wonderful, wonderful time. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.